to get a strong, healthy 70-year-old like John Michael Njenga Mututho mheshimiwa EBS. Si rahisi. Mungu ni mwema. They don't come in like that anymore. I like to introduce myself as a father, as a Christian, not a politician. I would like to introduce myself as a voice of reason. Obedient and very curious. I followed all instructions to the letter. Wake up, I woke up. Don't wet the bed, I didn't. Finish your food, I did. Faithfully, I did. The earliest memory, what I fancied was Christmas, because that was the only opportunity we had to eat chapati that time, those days. It was good, it was fun, we were waiting for it. We could decorate our huts. The whole place could be swept clean, everybody was in a festive mood. I've not seen such a carnival even in my older years. Christmas was Christmas. It was a moment of joy. They would slaughter bulls because there would be no meat anyway the whole year. Chapatis would be unlimited. Yeah? There are a lot of dancing. No violence at all. Plenty to eat. Lot of visitors from the city. That was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. First of all, to be an honor. They are very rare. 70-year-old are a bit rare now. With the amount of drugs people are taking and alcohol and all these accidents and what have you, to get a strong, healthy 70-year-old like John Michael Njenga Mututho mheshimiwa EBS. Si rahisi. Mungu ni mwema. They don't come in like that anymore. I feel as strong as I was in 45, 46, 47, all thereabout. So the 7-year-old should be very lucky that is meeting an icon. And every word I will utter is gold. It will not be about the ding-dongs you see in the TikTok, or the hula balos you see in YouTube, or all that mess you see with us politicians, and all those insults you see from all over across, from people pretending to be pastors, to serious people who are misinterpreting every clause in the Constitution. No, you're getting a solid man. And to me, as a 70-year-old, I will rejoice that I have been able to see the third generation. Because that particular 7-year-old would rightfully call me a grandfather or a great-grandfather, or even a great-great-grandfather. It's possible. When I was around 5, my late sister Nyambura allowed me to have an unlimited amount of tea with sugar. That was great. We could only have tea, like I said, during Christmas. We were living under very hard conditions, but we were well fed. We never slept hungry. But things like tea and sugar, for me to be allowed a whole serving, I first of all started by sweating before even taking the tea. No wonder I loved the tea from that time. I don't take alcohol. That was a very joyous moment. And I kept up to her death, and even after death. The other special day I remember is when I was still under around 5-6 years, and we were walking about 7-10 kilometers to church on Sunday. On our way back, around 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, a white woman called Mr. Geoffrey stopped the car, a Citroen, and wanted to give us a lift. First of all, we ran, because every time you saw a white man stop a car, it went, you are going to be whipped now. She stopped, and she was very kind. Just come, she really persuaded. Now the door is open now. How do you get in? How do you sit? You don't have shoes. The first time I had a ride in a car, that was at the age of 5. And when I sat, I did not know where to hold, but I sat in the back seat, back left for that matter. And I made a promise to myself that one day I'll buy my parents a car, and I would drive a Citroen like this one. I could feel the suspension even up to the wheel. It was like you are floating in water or something. That was very, very memorable. And because of that, I've loved cars. And my late father, I bought him a car. He was staying at Molo. There are no roads in those parts of the world. But I was able to organize for him a station wagon and kuanaita gari ya DC, kama ile ya DC, where he could also enjoy the drive and go and see his friends years before he passed on. I want to tell you, those are some things I cannot forget. There's a bad moment. I went to take lunch for my mom, my late mom, and the European kids. They let the dogs, and I got several bites along the knee area and around here. I never forgotten that. I didn't like it. I not done any offense. I was just bringing lunch. She was making good food for the Muzungus. Ours was just boiled maize, nothing more. And now that whole lunch goes down. And that maize is not so available, so there will be no lunch for mom until 6, 8 in the evening. I didn't like that. Yes, the spirit to fight and conquer them, which I have in my short, long life. I've been able to go to their places. I've been to over 87 countries. Some of them, like Israel, over 12 times. Australia, maybe a dozen times. UK, many times. US, not very many times, but quite a number. Yeah, I've been to over 224 cities. And East Africa, we don't have a city. It's only Nairobi, which looks like a city. I wanted to become an architect, to design things, to be an engineer. I wanted to go to Starehe or Mangu. I did not succeed. But later in life, I was satisfied that some of my sons went to Mangu, others went to Starehe. So that really appeased me. I tried very hard to become an architect. I went to Dagoretti High School after getting first division in Mikinda Secondary, and was doing MPC specifically because I wanted to become an architect, to design good structures. That did not work out right because the level of interference was too much. So I ended up at Egerton. At Egerton, I opted to do the study of arid lands. I did the region management, which is really studying the ecosystems of the arid areas and how it does. And that's when I met very, very poor people in Baringo, in Turkana, and other areas. People I never knew they existed. Early alone, I described ourselves as poor in Molo. But it's nothing compared to what those people go through or what they have up until today. So we wanted to work out a system to understand how you can restore the environment and so forth and so on. And because of that, I was able to study very well. Went to University of Nairobi with land management and agriculture now. But even before going there, within the first year of my reporting to a place now called Tharaka-Nithi, a place called Marimanti, I was able to convince international community to do a goat multiplication center. I think it's the only project where a junior officer, very junior officer, has ever implemented. I planned for the Tharaka-Nithi then, the irrigations, the livestock, and the vision I had was for those very well improved goats, because these goats in Tharaka had gone through decades, centuries of degradation, and we could improve, pick on those genes, and then introduce other breeds so that they can benefit in that harsh environment. So I did the first project, Marimanti Sheep and Goat Multiplication Center.
How is it in Nakuru?
Nakuru is good. It's great. Our neighbors are the Game National Park, the monkeys.
Nice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the lions, of course. And there's one I don't like a lot, the hyena.
What did you do in school?
We were only doing 3 subjects when we were your age.
Only 3?
Only 3. One called mathematics, one called writing, another one called drawing. Only 3?
Only 3.
Yeah.
We like one day we do like 10 to 11
subjects. Then you'll be great people. Yeah, you have learned a lot.
Yeah.
Bella, how are you?
Fine.
What is new? You don't look very happy. Has somebody upset you? Hmm?
How many sisters do you have?
Very many. We were 15, all of us. Many went to heaven. So we are very many. And my best friend was called Joe Karanja.
Joe Karanja.
Yes. I wanted to help my people. It's quite crystal clear. I didn't have mambo mingi. I wanted to see helping the people not to suffer. Call them my brothers, call them my sisters, call them my children. I like helping. I'm happy to start the day with as much as 100, 200,000 shillings and end up with freezer. End of the day, without taking a pint of alcohol, without taking any cigarette, without taking any drug, because I like helping. This world is for all of us. Those of us who are strong should hold the weak by the hand and help them cross through the river. You don't get poor by helping others. You'll never. Allow, if you're driving a powerful machines like we drive, allow the person walking, allow him to cross without hooting. Haraka ya nini? Haraka ya nini, like President Kibaki used to do. Take time. Take time to pray. Take time to understand who you are. Ndugu, I love my home. And there is one bed I like using a lot. Inside that bedroom, there is a mirror. That's the same mirror President Museveni was using. He used the same bedroom. Don't ask me where the house is. And every time I look at that mirror, I quickly remember, particularly a day like today, I'm seeing myself through the mirror, adjusting my tie as I'm supposed to do. But when I'm out there, what are people seeing in me? Are they seeing a buffoon? Are they seeing a clever person? Are they seeing a father? Are they seeing a grandfather? Are they seeing a terrorist? What are they seeing? That mirror quickly reminds me. What I should be, what I ought to be, is what I am seeing myself through that mirror, and say that other people matter. What you see yourself is what people would like to see you as. They don't see you holding a knife, holding a gun. You don't practice carrying sacks of money to go and abuse other people. They don't see you breaking into banks. They don't see you insulting. And that's why you see me in public, I don't insult anybody. I offer a voice of reason. We are human beings. Human beings are human beings because of their brain. That brain is God's own gift to mankind. You are not any cleverer than a mosquito. A mosquito can stand upside down in a ceiling. You can't. An elephant will walk through structures, including some of the buildings you think are strong. You can't. Cheetah will sprint like a sports car. You can't. Because for the first 6 months after conception, God is constructing the brain. And when complete, that organ has 100 billion neurons, approximately. 100 billion neurons. These neurons are special cells in the brain. They are not replaceable once injured, and so forth and so on. That's for another day. These neurons, in your language today, John, is just like it's just like a folder. It's like a computer folder. They store information. So you have a lot of it. I've not heard of anyone anywhere who has been able to utilize 10% of that potential that you carry between the 2 years. Nobody. So you'll find most of the people are around 5% clever ones like yourselves. Yeah? But it's not surprising that you're having some guys who are at zero usage of 0.0001%. And some of them, it looks like they could be MCAs or MPs. I could see some of them. Yeah? You're using a very small portion of your brain or your folders. A folder stores information. You interpret events and things as per your capacity. For you to have a perfect human being, you need to have the right volume of oxygen, pressure, temperature at birth. You get it? At that first few seconds of birth, that is when they open, because God is so clever, will not allow the formatting, you understand, the formatting of that big organ while it was in your mother's womb, because you would hear all the quarrels with your father, you would hear all the rumbling because of the arteries and the heart and the stomach and so forth. So you are born sober. And now you start recording immediately after formatting. So the formatting will decide how many folders are ready to receive information. I say the quality of oxygen, breathing through the nostrils. So you see, somebody born in modern hospitals, and allow me to name a Nairobi hospital for instance, and they do it right. They have the right pressure, right temperature, they are doing it right, so that that child within the first few seconds, already they are concentrating more on feeding the oxygen than any other thing. So that child opens a lot of folders. But for us, we were born in the dark at night. There was very little light, smoke. So the child was literally suffocating at birth. And people are more interested in cleaning the child than clearing the nostrils that particular time. So you find you didn't open adequate folders. I'm just being scientific. So you find somebody like us now, when we're going to school, you're going to school at the age of 7. When you could be able to move your hand like this, not about your mental capability, but your physique. That would make a judgment to show that you are led 7 years and let it run. We would start slow, and that is the basis of the 7 years of primary. Now, look at my grandchild. There is one particular one. I have a number. This guy, he was engaging with the aunties in a very serious argument. Why should they call me Babu? Why? And he had already visited the national park, and there was an animal called baboon. How? How do you call this guy who you value so much, the father of your father? How do you call him Babu? And then others are calling them Guka. So he invented his term and called my name actually should be Buka, which is a compromise. That's a 2.5-year-old. A compromise between the Guka and Babu. So I got attracted to listen to this man. What is he talking about? So I'm Buka. I'm not Guka. I'm not Babu. Then he gave me a long lecture on the planets. Some of them I've never heard, on the orbit and the universe and so forth. Before I could remember, the guy was born at Nairobi Hospital. And he has a lot of folders. So the first few years of life, any information he has exposed to, he has been able to store, assimilate, and can utilize that one. That is the difference between us of yesterday and those of today who have been lucky enough to be treated that way. Unfortunately for my Buka, the policymakers, people who decide on professions, are these semi-ancient people who are not willing to learn. So they are forcing Buka now. I'm calling him Buka because he called me Buka. They are forcing him to do so many years in primary, so many years here, say 6, 7 years, depending which system we are looking at. They are not looking at your mental capability to move to the next level. They are looking at your age to move. Because the policy makers, the decision makers, the ministers of this world, or cabinet secretaries, are those who opened very few folders, and they're still learning very slowly. And they want to bring down time to affect these other ones. That is a disaster. I would like to do politics again, and a very fiery politics, and serious politics this time. I mean very serious, and I'm preparing for it because of Buka. my glad child. When I look at him and see the amount of handles we are putting for him to advance, I didn't tell you, by the time he was 3 years, was describing to me all the special equipment there are in the world, the bulldozers, the ambulances, and so forth and so on. By that time, we were still crying with the Makamasi ourselves at that age. So that man, if he was put under what I imagine should be, by this time he should have cleared maybe half by 5 years he could have cleared half of the primary school work, and perfect, because the whole idea is of information and information processing. And that information processing, the capacity is massive. So why are you keeping him for 3, 5 years, whatever you're calling it, whether you're calling it 844, it's all nonsense. Pure nonsense. And that's why I want to come in and do politics, because the policy makers, those ones who decide what my Buka will study, are those ones who are doing R, E, or U with me at class at age 7. They are out of space. I want to state here what we need to do now, and what we should embrace ourselves to do, is to stop this nonsense of CBC, where a child is carrying books, 20 kilos of books. You are damaging the very frame, the structure, particularly ladies, young girls. Because of the weight, that bag affects the structure of a person. So you find the young girls are now having problems which are meant for adults. There are books that expire. These books that expire, the child who is in class 1 cannot pass those books to the sister who is coming to class 1 next year. It is commercial interest, pure nonsense. If it is like that, how come we are still reading the Bible? The Bible should have expired a long time ago. And we are still reading the way it was, the way St. John wrote, St. Luke, and so forth, and Mark. So what we need now is digital competence curriculum, so that you have one equipment which is good enough for a child to carry a child through for the first 9 years in school, and they cannot be able to go to the next level until you master this. We need some people who understand that with AI, artificial intelligence, you can now be able, from the open source, you can be able to do the marking of even very long essays, yeah, so that the child doesn't have to wait anxiously for 3 days for teacher to mark. Na kama amekula chang'aa, then it's bad news. The marking can be done almost instantly. One teacher can handle all the population of students in the country, in their thousands. The best teacher in Alliance or Mangu or Michinda, where I studied, can be able to cover the whole country, and everybody going to learn. We need digital competence curriculum. So that mismatch between adults who have been glorified to come to power because of the right tribe, because of the right family, and the brain which is semi-functional, forcing the illiteracy into a very modern generation of youth, is Hyundai Nanikera. I'm the founder of Computer for Schools Kenya. That's my NGO. And we have been able to do 550,000 computers distributed schools. I am proudly the father of digitalization. The Kenyans are ahead of other Africans because John Mututho of Kenya has faithfully, without gain, been able to distribute 550,000 computers through the Computer for Schools Kenya, CFSK, trained over 20,000 teachers, very many mobile training, and so forth and so on. Right now, we are talking about artificial intelligence. Over 95% of Kenyans don't even have an idea what we are talking about. So they will be caught off guard. You'll be caught trying to do things like Lord Lamia used to do them, and you find you don't belong to this planet. Then there's elevation into specs. You see, we were quick, very fair legendary, to adopt Chinese way of doing highways. It's fast, efficient, they're smooth, and so forth. But we forgot one fundamental in their construction industry. I'm not an engineer, but I can observe because I've lived long enough to know that. They forgot that every time they're doing this road, they're doing it as if they're doing a dam. They broke in total. They go 6 feet down, or roughly 2 meters down, and then compact the soil, maybe about another 20, 30, 40 meters, depending on the size of the road. So it's like you're constructing a dam. So what happens? The natural water flow from uphill, or the upper section, is blocked. So the upper section of the road is soggy. The lower section is starving of water. It's technology. So the engineers we have today, because they were so schoolish, forgot that the British had a reason where they used hardcore, so that water can seep through in the process of development. So if only the Chinese of today and our engineers of today could take time to study and understand the environment, then it would be easier to understand that this road can still be done the Chinese way, but you must provide for multiple drainages under the road. The problem in Kenyan agriculture, and you can quote me, is that we are ignoring the very fundamentals of agriculture, the 4 factors of production. And the 4 factors are land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship. These things are intertwined. With one not working, you don't have agriculture. So even before you talk about KPCU and KTDA, there is no agriculture in tea farming if labor has a mess, if you don't have land, if you don't have entrepreneurship or management. So I found out then, and that's why the late Kibaki was my good friend, that there's a problem. The problem in Mount Kenya area and agriculture is actually labor. The average age of farmer at that time was 67 years old. How do you expect them to work in the fields of tea, coffee, and so forth? So we went ahead under very serious scrutiny by the late President Kibaki, and that to have a solution. And they looked at it from 1902, when they declared alcoholism a problem in Murang'a, through 100 years. And that's how I came up with Mututho laws. Mututho law is not built on imaginary stories. It is science incorporated into a legislative framework that will control the production, the consumption, and sale of alcohol. That's what we call Mututho laws. And I'm glad the courts, particularly the current Chief Justice, have really upheld the law. All efforts by the people, by the alcohol lords and drug lords to stop the law has been unsuccessful. I thank the Chief Justice, Mother Koome, for that. Let me tell you, Mututho law is based on deep science of 103 years on an effort to try and solve this problem. And when they found I had made it now, they ambushed me. Of course, I was not a minister. I was in Parliament. But they blocked, they didn't block, but they refused to gazette 3 out of the 4 regulations arising from that law. So the only regulations that were gazetted was 1 on access, but the regulations on quality, regulations on treatment and rehabilitation, and regulations on reinforcement were never gazetted up until today. So the government cannot pretend to be serious on management of alcohol abuse and drugs, while they are sitting on a simple exercise, just signing and gazetting regulations. These ones will make sure that those ones who are to drink wine, let them take wine, but not a concoction of chemicals and colors and food colors being called wine. Those ones who want to take Muratina, let them take it. But Muratina, as it is, has only 5 ingredients. If you're introducing Muratina with 20 ingredients, that's not Muratina, that's your concoction. If you want to take opaque beer, the popular opaque beers, which you know them, and you have a lot of them, these opaque beers you are taking, they must be definite threshold in ingredients. Today you cannot say you are making a beer with barley and malt, then tomorrow you are doing it with millet and malt or something else. You are fooling everybody. There must be a standard. That's well covered in the regulations on quality. I want to tell you, I want to repeat, since you came, I want to tell you, as of this hour, as of this day, there is nobody manufacturing vodka in Kenya. I've not seen one. And if you know any, everything else is a scam. And even these big people calling themselves distillers and what have you, it's just a scam. In any case, you can never get vodka from the original molecule, that's carbohydrate, originating from a cereal or potato or tuber. What you have in Kenya is rum, like the thing they have in Jamaica. Because ours originates, that alcohol originates from sugarcane, from sucrose. It is basic science, but since we are so limited in our reading capacity, and that thing we were given by at the University of Nairobi, the power to read and to do all that apart of that is terribly missing. You are still seeing people here advertising that thing, bra 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 vodka, a total mess. Then what follows is an erosion of your brain and your decision maker, lots of potholes inside your brain, and non-functional liver, kidneys at fail, a lot of cancer in the body, and so forth and so on. Just because somebody has been bribed heavy enough as not to gazette regulations. And the law is there, and the law is upright. I'm a strong believer in God. And I want you to look at, for once, John the Evangelist. John Mututho, you see today, is part of the team of 23 people, worshippers, who started St. Simon Parish in Turi. I was a boy. And I remember it with a lot of nostalgia. The Muzungu at St. Andrews, what you say is Turi school today, allowed us to pray in a shed which is meant for the horses. It was not occupied. That was the first church. And gradually, with the support of my father and others and the community, a very beautiful community at Turi, St. Simon Turi is now a very big parish, if you look through. So I'm part of that group of 23 people with Simon Makuku that started that. I'm talking about John Mututho, the evangelist. John Mututho is the one who introduced Catholicism in Egerton University. I was able to persuade our friend and my lecturer, Paul Meto, later Professor Paul Meto, Dr. Paul Meto. He was able to allow and persuade the principal to allow us to read Mass, and were given a new hall which had been donated by Holland to be doing Mass there during the weekend, not to occupy it, as you know, occupation. H1. Those ones who have been to University of Egerton know H1. That's where they read the first Mass. And that was done by a father, by a bishop, retired bishop called McCarthy. That retired bishop, he read the first Mass there, let alone Bishop Dingy did. And from there, you have now what you are having, that big Catholic community, allowed Egerton and allowed all that involvement. They have a very big church now. That is John Mututho in person. Same John Mututho, when he went to Nairobi University, I persuaded Professor Father Dodas, instead of us going to St. Paul's, to be coming to Kabete. And he accepted my proposal. And we were able now to do at a hall called PHPT, opposite the old dining at Kabete, those happening to Kabete campus. That's where they read the first Mass. PHPT is something pharmacology, blah, 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 blah. I was able to do that. At the same time, at Egerton, we were able to do YCS, college YCS, with the late Ombati and Professor Lelo and others. And Dr. Njoroge, now I understand is a professor at KU, and many people. Thereafter, we did the Catholic professionals. I've not finished with you yet, and let alone when I'm at in Parliament, I started CAMSI, Catholic Members of Parliament Spiritual Support Initiative, and for the first time, they are now able to read Mass. Although they are neighbors with Basilica, nobody was allowed to come and read Mass and recite hymns there and lit candles in Parliament for all the first 50 years until John Mututho, with the help of the Tangaza community and my PA called Alice, and two fathers from Tangaza, we were able now to do what they are doing today. And now you are able to see the big things. And because of that, the late Pope Francis was able to invite me in 2016, and I had a private session with him. So I believe in God. I'm not saying I'm a good man. I'm a sinner like anybody else. But in evangelism and in faith and believe in God, there we are. And God has blessed me with a wonderful family. We are all Christians. We are good.